Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
Welcome back. We bring the year to a close by celebrating the 100th episode of Solo, 2 years after its launch date. To do so, I invite back two friends who joined me on episode 1, An Introduction to Solo, and episode 50, Looking Forward and Looking Back. Julie Nervelli was born and raised in San Jose, California, and earned her college degree from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. She's lived in Colorado for more than 17 years, and as a strong, independent, and fun-loving person, Julie embraces the solo life. She's also a sponsor of the podcast with her company, Bachelor Girl Productions, which sells fun, flirty t-shirts. We're joined by Kim Terabeel. Kim is an entrepreneur and the solo founder of Wax Crescent, a candle company focused on the idea of self-care and intentional living, also a sponsor of the podcast. Kim holds a degree in English literature from the University of Hawaii and now lives in Longmont, Colorado. Besides the excellent conversation, we taped some bonus material where we talk about the lost art of canceling plans. You can find that bonus material in the solo community. Sign up at petermcgraw.org/solo, where it's free to join for now. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It is episode 100 after all. Let's get started. Welcome back, Julie.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Welcome back, Kim.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
So here we are, 2 years later, and 100 episodes later. And I think this is a good time to reflect and project.
Love it. I can't believe it's been 2 years.
I can't believe that either. That was actually the first night I met Julie, was the first episode we recorded.
Yep.
So.
I was about to say the same thing.
So for the infrequent listener, you may not know this, but Julie and Kim are frequent guests or guest co-hosts, but most notably, they were the first guests, episode 1. They both returned together for episode 50, where we did something similar to what we're doing today, which is to look backwards and to look forwards. And I think there's certainly a lot more to look backwards on.
Right.
And there's a lot more to look forward on, as we'll see here. So we're going to spend most of our time looking backwards, which is unusual for me. You two know me well.
You're going forward.
I'm always
Look that
moving
direction.
forward.
Onward,
Look that direction.
always.
Onwards, yes. But I think there's a lot to be learned from looking back. And so you two were given homework, as I tend to do.
Yes, Professor.
And so I asked you for some ways that the podcast has changed you. I think I even went as far as to say how it has changed your life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How hyperbolic.
It is life-changing. I mean, I get that feedback all the time from people.
That the podcast has been life-changing.
Yeah.
Well, we have a story we can tell about that at some point here when we talk about the Solo Salon.
Oh, right.
My life has changed, I think, in ways that I couldn't have anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, frankly, I didn't know where this was going to go at episode 1.
Right.
And at episode 50, I had a much better feeling. And now I have clarity, I would say. Was it hard for you to come up with your list?
At first it was, yeah, I think so. Just being in a completely different space I was when I started listening and when we did the first episode. Now I'm in a relationship with someone, so trying to figure out how the solo lifestyle still fits into that was really interesting and challenging.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Julie?
No, I didn't have a hard time coming up with a list.
That's why, whose list was late?
Well, I broke my thumb, so my list was late. I had a mountain biking crash.
That's a good excuse.
Julie was mountain biking solo and,
Yes, I was.
And had a fall. What I did was, because I'm a good professor, I went through all of your life-changing moments, insights, and looked at mine and saw 3 themes, 3 categories. And I thought we would go through each of those in order. And they are recognizing the promise of a non-traditional relationship,
Mm-hmm.
how to behave when dating, and living unapologetically. This feels like Jeopardy. I'll take living apologetically for 500, Peter.
Yes.
So let's start with recognizing the promise of non-traditional relationships.
Okay.
And if I may, I have been working on a taxonomy of singles, the different types of singles in the world. And it's an evolving concept, but it's come a long way. And so I'd like to present that, first of all, just to see, I have a hunch which of the categories each of you belong to, but just to lay it out.
Okay.
And then we can talk about some of the ways that you've recognized this promise, or in the case, perhaps you'll even share how you're doing more than recognizing it.
Okay.
Hint, hint. So the first one is this category, and this is like the conventional singles. This is the someday category. Someday I'm going to have an LTR. Someday I'm going to ride the relationship escalator. And frankly, life's not complete until I'm on the escalator. You might call these folks the hopeless romantics of the world. And I think most singles, at least sort of traditional singles, fall into that category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. That's the type of single that we're used to historically.
They're around us everywhere. We
Right.
see them on the dating apps, and they're the ones who are asking you at Thanksgiving dinner, is there anyone special in your life? And, many of those people are on that escalator at the moment.
Right.
The next group and the remaining three groups are solos in terms of their identity, their psychology, and how they approach relationships or not. So the next groups I call the just may group. I just may ride the relationship escalator. I just may have an LTR. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That's okay. I'm not incomplete. I don't need it to be happy, but I would welcome it if it did. You might call these sort of the hopeful romantics
Okay.
in that sense. The next group, no way. Right?
Just may to no way.
So these are the folks, and this may be a temporary state of the world, or it may be a permanent state of the world. So these are folks who are not interested in dating. They're not interested in a relationship. They might be single at heart, as Bella DePaulo calls them. They've been referred to in the literature as solitaires. At the far extreme, they may be loners, where they're not interested in many types of relationship, not just romantic or sexual in that way. And then the last group is a new way.
Oh.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are folks who are approaching relationships in an unconventional way. They're diverging from the relationship escalator in some notable way. Maybe they don't want to live with their partner. Maybe they're polyamorous. Maybe they don't hold that relationship to a sort of higher status than other relationships in their life. Maybe they prefer a sexual friendship, or they're consensually non-monogamous. The list is endless, right? As we've documented in previous episodes. So we have someday, just may, no way, and a new way.
I love the rhyming.
Thank you. It sort of beats type 1, type 2.
Yeah.
Type
Oh, yeah.
3,
No, I
type
like
4.
it. It's cute.
I have a question
Sure.
about the no way.
Yes.
You said not interested in dating or long-term relationship. I guess if they were interested in dating, then they would be the new way.
Yeah, if all you wanted was casual dating, that would be a new way.
Yep. Okay.
I would say.
That makes sense.
Right? So what do you think? I'm onto something here?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think it helps for people to think about those categories. And I mean, if you're being, again, intentional, that's always been my theme. If you're being intentional about what you're doing, that kind of helps guide your thinking and helps you process where you might fall.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be done with this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even just as a way to help people talk about their goals, because this really is about goals when you think about it. And most people just assume that you're in a someday kind of mode,
Right.
or at best into a sort of casual new way kind of thing, which is, I'm not looking for something serious at the moment, right? Hookup culture or something like that that's there. Well, how does these ideas relate to what you reflected on in terms of non-traditional relationships, which sort of are new way
Mhm.
category, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think in terms of like the relationship that I have now is really non-traditional. I think it's a new way. You know, we're both trying to define for ourselves what works in our relationship and what doesn't.
Well, let's step back.
Yeah.
Kim, you're in a relationship.
I'm in a relationship. Yeah.
What does it look like?
The relationship.
Yeah.
You know, we're living together. He's someone who's been in my life for a long time, on and off. We're really good friends. We live together really well. Most of the time, we live together as roommates. We have separate rooms.
I like it.
I found I need my space just from past relationships and living with previous partners. I can't do the 24/7 domesticated, you know, this is it relationship escalator. So when we decided to move in together, it was a lot of it had to do with, you know, we both wanted a life that we found we could build together as a partnership, a friendship partnership, better with someone than alone, just in terms of being able to afford a house with a yard. And
Kim has 2 dogs.
I do. I have 2 dogs. So that's a big consideration. So we got a house and we're really great friends. And he's my boyfriend a couple days a week.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So the separate room thing, how did that topic get broached? How did
I was like, how did you get to that? How did that happen?
Tell me how.
Was so
tell me how
natural.
to do it.
Like, I need my own space. I grew up in a house with 4 sisters. I didn't have my own room my whole life, and I love it. I love my own space. I have very secret girly things I like to do, and I'm alone that I don't want other people to see.
So it's called a vibrator.
I was more talking about like facials, you know, that kind of thing.
Bath bombs.
Bath bombs, yes. Facials, bath bombs.
Kim is
candles.
the queen of self-care.
I love it. Skincare, wrinkle cream. You can't see that. That's hiding in my bathroom.
Vats of wrinkle cream.
You have separate bathrooms also.
Yes.
Okay.
I think separate bathrooms is the key to a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about moving in, you just said, oh, I need my own room.
We both did. Yeah. He's 47. He's very set in his ways. He's not willing to compromise on certain things, which I guess I applaud him for. He knows who he is. And
yes.
He was not going to move into a house unless we had 2 separate bathrooms, which now I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a really good friendship.
Yes. I know a little bit about this. So you also vacation separately?
We do, yeah. He just went to Mexico by himself. I'm trying to plan a trip to Hawaii for January. I think it's really important for at least him and I to take space from each other. When he was in Mexico, it was actually the best week that I had had in a really long time. Right. It reminded me of all like the amazing self-care I give to myself when I'm single, that I find when I'm in a relationship, you kind of divert some of that energy to someone else. So I was really depleted between giving to a partner, giving to a business, giving to my dogs, and I just needed to give it back to myself. So
I think that's fabulous. I think that's a grett model for people to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're definitely a new way.
I am a new way. And you didn't think I was, right?
When you told me you were moving in 2 years ago, much less so.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Kim loves her monogamy, though.
I do. I'm very like that. That's the most important thing in our relationship is I won't at this point in time allow anything other than monogamy. I need it. And I know that about myself.
Yeah, I think that's important to know.
I've been wanting to ask that question, but I didn't know if I could. It was okay to ask.
You can. I can't, for whatever reason, I can't not have monogamy.
Well, that's good that you know that.
I know that.
And also it's good that you've contemplated the other side. I mean, I think a lot of people who do monogamy never even allow themselves to go, well, what might that look like? And how might I do it? And so on. So I think you've done the work to know who you are.
At this point in time, who knows?
Yes. don't let that young face.
Episode 300.
Yeah, I was joking. Well, I was like, I'll have you back at episode 500, and a lot can change between now and then. Yeah, so don't let Kim's young face fool you. She's lived a little. She knows what's good for her. Joy?
That's awesome. Okay, so we're talking about unconventional.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of recognition of the potential promise. You've been married. You've rode the relationship escalator.
Yes.
Till divorce did you part.
We did.
Yes.
I've divorced twice.
I know.
Actually.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm pretty much done with that. yeah, it's been, quite an evolution for me. And I think I should tell this funny story. So I had just gotten out of a relationship. He was controlling and jealous and anger issues. And it was...
Which one was this?
Yeah,
I
thanks.
I can't remember. Can't keep track.
I haven't done it again since then. And it's been a couple years.
That's true. You've made big strides.
Yes. So I was vacationing in Mexico with my friend Greg, and we met this other couple, and he was telling them, Julie tends to get into these types of relationships. I think she's so independent that it drives some men a little bit crazy, and they start having these behaviors. And the woman of the couple said, you just need to date a millennial because they're used to independent women. They've grown up. Their moms are that way, So I was wondering, like, how
she's like, you need to be a cougar. That's what she basically said.
So strangely enough, less than a week later, I was out seeing live music, met this guy.
Can we use his nickname?
Should we use his nickname? Do you want to? Okay.
Now I have to hear the nickname.
Oh my God. Now I'm starting to sweat. Young Skywalker.
What's the origin of that nickname?
Just that he's young.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my friends was like, oh, he's like young Skywalker. So anyway, he's a listener too. So, hey. So I met him and I thought he was older because he had shaved his head bald and he thought I was younger. So it wasn't an intentional, I mean, I knew he was younger, but I wasn't sure how much younger. So
I always tease Julie for being older than me. So there's so many jokes I want to make right now.
Yeah.
But I won't.
Thank you. So when I first discovered his actual age, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do, that's pretty young. And I remember I text 3 friends. Well, I text 2 guys, Pete being one of them, and 2 women. And both of the guys were like, yeah, go for it. And the women were like, nope, that's too much of an age gap. But
I was like, where was a woman like Julie when I was that age? My goodness.
So we developed this really amazing quote unquote relationship. I mean, he's really mature, sweet. I feel like he almost showed me a new kind of person that I could be with without being with the jealous, controlling. Like that story has been done over and over in my life. So what I learned from that is we were brutally, openly honest about everything because that's so important anyway, but it was also kind of like, well, there's nothing to lose here, so we should just put it all out on the table.
So when you say about everything, what are some of those everythings?
Well, talking about, that we would not ever have a like really serious relationship. And, he said, someday I'm probably going to want to meet someone my own age. And
he's more of a just may.
Yes, I would
think
say that's
deep down.
Right. Yeah. And then he met someone and he said, I want to explore that. And I was happy for him. And then that didn't work out. And, we
knock, knock, knock.
Exactly. But it was just such a really nice time with him. And I think prior to all of this, I think when you're dating, especially on the app, when you're in that, more relationship escalator mindset, you're evaluating everyone for long-term relationship. And in a first date, you can see a couple of things where you might eliminate someone. Nope, he's not long-term relationship quality. But now I can just be with someone or go on. I just enjoy someone's company and it doesn't have to be, what is this going to turn into? But it's more like, how can I enjoy this person and what can I learn? And
it's like a choose your own adventure.
Right.
Rather than a Jane Austen novel.
Right.
You're just like, oh, well, I'm going to choose path B with this person. Seems like a better fit. And we'll see where it goes.
I do remember you talking about that in the first episode that we did. And it was one of the things that really stuck with me when I was dating and on the apps. You talked about how at the end of a date, you'd be like, well, did I have a nice time? Do I want to do this again? It doesn't really matter if there's a future in this. It's just thinking about it in the moment and saying, how did this make me feel? So when I was dating a bunch, I was like, that's exactly the approach I'm going to take to things.
Yeah. And that's actually when I met Skywalker, when I was having trouble with the age. That's what I went back to was, did I enjoy meeting him and do I want to see him again? So the answer was yes, knowing that I might see him and then have different feelings about the age difference. And then that might be it.
Yeah, right.
But why not one more time and see how that feels.
Age is a blunt instrument when it comes to trying to figure out the acceptability of a partner.
Right.
Because there are plenty of people your age who are children.
Oh, yes.
So like, you know, so it's only like a guidepost, I would say, in many cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think we even talked about this on the first episode. It's like, I just use, is conversation good? Am I attracted to this person? And then let's just sort of see where it goes. It's a lot of pressure for a first or second date to figure out the long-term viability
right.
of someone. Like, people have bad days, and you'd be surprised what you can adapt to. And you know, like in Kim's situation, for example, it's like what people will agree to, you know, like that they have limits about their living situation, for example, and that those things can be negotiated and agreed upon.
Yeah. And I think once you take out the idea of like the relationship escalator, like this is what I'm working towards for my future, and you're like, I don't know, I just want to have fun and see how it feels, it takes the pressure off and it opens you up to a whole bunch of new experiences you might not have, you know, had. Like, you got to meet this amazing person that probably, had you been on the path to this is what I want in the future, you wouldn't have spent time with.
Right.
You know,
and my
in the
friends,
same way.
Yeah. My friends joke that's the best relationship I've ever had.
It is. I mean, I've known Julie for 17 years, and she certainly speaks fondly of it.
Yeah.
Skywalker.
Hey,
we want you back. You're our only hope. What is that? I'm not enough of a Star Wars nerd to do all the things.
He's in a relationship now, and so we don't really talk that much. But
yeah, I see. That's fine. That's good. All right. So I have to say, I mean, we're talking about these ideas very nonchalantly, but frankly, when I was learning about them, it blew my mind. You know, when I was interviewing Amy Guerin, who is the creator of the relationship escalator, well, not the creator of the escalator, but the creator of the term and deconstructing it, like, I just couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, I now have a framework, I have language, and also I just have a way to think about this and know that there are alternatives, and they're not as out there, you know, as they're often sort of treated. I like to say that at best, if you're a new way, you get treated with curiosity at best and with contempt at worst. You know, like I've had people just unmatch me immediately from an app when I expressed an interest in something other than the relationship escalator.
Right.
Like, not even oh, that's nice, but no thank you. It's just
you're done.
You're done. And, you know, even just like what you may encounter, for example, so like, imagine being a consensually non-monogamous person or a polyamorous person and writing in your profile, if you're monogamous, swipe left.
Right.
But you see that, the opposite of that regularly, right? If you're ENM, swipe left. You know, and so it just shows you the asymmetry between the conventional folks and the unconventional folks in terms of navigating this world. So I'm puzzling over how I might define myself within that fourth category. So one of the nice things about the podcast, or about the solo project more generally, is I now have kind of like prototypes. For example, Amy Guerin, who I just mentioned, she's solo poly. So what does this mean? So she lives on her own, separate from her romantic relationships. She has roommates, but she doesn't live with either of her partners. She has two partners, or she calls them sweeties, who she's romantically involved with, and I think sexually involved with at least one, maybe both of them. I can't recall. Doesn't matter for our purposes. So she has it. I'm like, I'm part of me is like, I kind of like the Amy style of relationship. I love living alone. I have a lot of love to give. You know, I have lots and lots of friends that I give a lot of love to. My love that I give to one friend doesn't diminish my love that I give to another friend. Maybe that's something I could explore, or I could try to do.
That's interesting.
Kind of a thing, right? Like,
I always wanted to hear from Amy's sweeties. Like, I would love for them to be on a podcast.
to have them chat about it. I can ask her. We can put it on the list.
Would just be interesting.
Yeah, from the Metamors is what they're called.
Oh. I've never heard that.
That's the term. So she would be called the hinge.
Okay.
In in this situation and they're metamors. They're independent of each other for the most part, I think. Apologies, Amy, or her metamors, if we've gotten any of the facts. But in general, just as a prototype of a type of relationship, for me, I'm like, oh, there's some appeal there that might be there.
Another analogy I've thought of, what you just said, you have lots of love to give to friends, is people who have multiple children. You can love multiple children.
That's right.
Equally.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm a believer that you can be romantically involved with more than one person. Now, you can't be romantically involved with more than one person in a traditional relationship escalator style where that person and you share everything together, share all your same space, share the identity, share your lifestyle, and so on. You start to, just crowd someone else out. But with a certain amount of solo living, independent living, I think that it can be possible to do. The second model is my friend Matt. Now, Matt hasn't appeared on the podcast, but I've been talking to him a lot about this kind of stuff. And he'll appear in my forthcoming book. So Matt describes himself as 90% monogamous.
Okay.
And so Dan Savage has this term, monogamish. So in Matt's relationship, he has a partner, a primary partner, a romantic partner, and they play together and separately. So that is that they have sexual relationships with other people that are consensual and disclosed. That's there. What's really fascinating about Matt is to watch his progression. When we were becoming friends, he had started dating a woman and moved in with her and was riding the escalator with her and did so for several years. And then that didn't work out. And he sort of realized that he just wasn't a someday or just may kind of person. Like he just didn't think an escalator style relationship was going to work with him. And so then he became a no way. He's like, I just have to go it alone. Kind of this lone wolf mentality. Until he started to explore some of these new way ideas. And then he met his partner. And I think he said that on their first date was just, as he called it, a face check. So, so they just met, briefly for a cup of coffee or walk in the park or something like that. But on their second date was just really forthcoming about what his desires were. And she said, and I really like this, she said, why can't you have it all? Why can't you have a primary partner and still have something that's non-monogamous? And they're going strong. Wow. Kind of thing. And so there's part of me that's like, well, that's kind of exciting. You know what I mean? You have this deep bond, you have you have this team, and then you get to spice things up as you like. It's not without challenges, but of course, monogamy is not without challenges that are there.
When you were talking about the different types, I liked, and this emphasizes that, I liked that you said that your state could be now or it could change. Because I think I went into no way mode also. Well, not really, because no way means no dating. So I never did that.
But there's, a lot of people, I shouldn't say this, the largest minority of singles, nearly 50% of singles, are in no way mode at the current moment, not interested in dating or a relationship at the moment. Yeah. That's a striking statistic. So just if you're listening and you're in no way mode, you have a lot of other people who are living the same way as you are.
I feel like I definitely went into that mode. I think it was like maybe the first year we knew each other, I was like, okay, I'm not dating anyone for the next, I think it was like 4 months. I would take myself out on dates.
That's right. We talked about that episode 1.
Go places by myself.
Kim is the queen of self-care.
I know. Well, you know what it was? I knew I didn't want the relationship escalator type of relationship. It didn't feel good to me. It felt very suffocating and constricted. And I didn't know where to go from that. And I felt like I just needed to turn inward and do some work. So I think it was like 4 to 6 months where I literally once a week would take myself out somewhere. I'd go to see like a play or go out to dinner and do all this scary stuff that forced a lot of growth. But I think the no way was a transitional point for me into a new way.
Mm-hmm. No, if I were to critique my own copy here, I think no way is a little strong, but I want to be provocative, but it could be temporary.
Yes. Yeah. And no way doesn't have to be forever. It could just be at that moment. Like,
yes.
No, I don't want to focus on someone else. I want to focus on myself and what I want. And,
building a business, making art, getting in shape, traveling. Exactly. So the third style, and then we'll move on to the next one, is probably where I'm at right now. And this is the term relationship anarchy, which I have acknowledged is not a great term, but in principle, I think it's probably the best fit for where I am at this moment. And I think it's very close to your perspective, Julie. And so the idea behind relationship anarchy is that the people in the relationship, the two or more people in the relationship, decide on the rules of the relationship. That is, they get to design the relationship. What are, in the case of, is it romantic or not? What is the nature of the intimacy or not? About living situation and so on. And so what that does is if you approach every relationship, not as I'm looking for solo poly or I'm looking for monogamish, depending on who's in your life at the moment, what the connection is like, you get to design your relationship there. And so, again, one person might become a friends with benefits. Another person might end up becoming a relationship escalator. Another person might end up being monogamish with you, and so on and so forth. And so I think that there's sort of power in just sort of keeping an open mind and then just working on the communication necessary for that. So like if someone's like, what type of 4 are you? I'm just like, I'm a relationship anarchist. Even though I have very little experience with it, I've been playing around with this quite a lot, especially since my return to Denver.
I like that because when people come to the table with, this is what I want, without the flexibility of being open to something else, I mean, how do you know what you would be willing to give and take with a certain person? And so I do like that idea of being open. And that's kind of what happened with Young Skywalker. Like,
that's right.
We
that's
wrote the rules and
it worked well.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
that
great.
term is actually giving me a little bit of anxiety. I feel a little discomfort with it because I would push back a little bit and say I wouldn't call it like relationship anarchy. I would call it relationship conscious.
Okay.
Because you're almost looking at each person and being like, how do I want this person to fit into my life? What can we build together that is special to this person that doesn't fit into the mold?
Yeah. I think anarchy is not a great term. It has a bad rep, but really it's about forgoing rules, outside rules in a sense. But I understand.
I all of a sudden I got like hot and
there's a lot of heat in this room right now.
Escalator anarchy.
So yeah, I understand. There's it's a new idea and it's still I think emerging, and it probably could use a little rebrand, frankly. But
the thing I'm seeing with all these, aside from someday types of relationships, are communication. I think is like at the root of everything. There needs to be communication and trust to make the relationship work.
I think that's a perfect segue into our second category of life-changing elements of this podcast, and that is how to behave when dating. And this, I think, the sort of overarching idea, and this has come up before, is like how to be a good citizen in the world of dating. And so each of you wrote about this in different ways. What do you got for us?
Well, mine, recognizing that I traditionally am a people pleaser and would sacrifice
it's why Julie and I get along so well.
Because I can put up with a lot.
You can.
Just recognizing that I would put my own needs and wants aside to please other people. And so I think that the idea that comes up over and over again throughout the podcast is ask for what you want. And it's such a powerful thing. And, the other person can't read your mind. They're not going to know what you want unless you ask. It's a form of communication. And I mean, that can be used in so many ways.
That's right.
I, as you know, I had a mountain biking crash a week ago, and this guy in my life said, let me know if you need anything. And I said, I could use some emotional support snuggles. And he was like, when? Tomorrow night? He was all over it. And it was, that's what I wanted. So that's what I asked for. And it was such an easy ask. But I think in the past, I would have thought, oh, I don't want him to think I'm needy, or I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It could have excused that away. But that's really what I needed and wanted. And it was great.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Small example, but
it's an
it's
important
powerful.
one.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's
baby
right.
steps.
I think for
Kim's looking at her notes.
well,
Kim has notes.
I have a clipboard. I'm a very good student. I have a clipboard, but I kind of forgot the question.
No, about the. I think you had mentioned something about how terrible it is to be ghosted.
Oh yeah, that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. And I think when I was dating a lot, especially on the app, I would go out sometimes. I think I was going on 6 dates a week, meeting people just for coffee or a walk or something. Because I was like, I'm going to go out with everyone. Why not? And there would be a lot of times where, someone would want to see you again and I wouldn't want to see them. And I would be very clear and have that really hard conversation and just be like, hey, like, I think you're great. I don't feel any kind of romantic spark or, and that's hard to say to someone. But I think just having listened to, the episode you had, I think it was Jill on, she talked about like dating and being a good citizen and having those hard conversations because it's actually a kindness.
That was the How to Go on a Date episode with Dahlia.
It was.
Yeah, that was very fun. I actually had a whole episode on ghosting also, and what a phenomenon it's become and how hurtful it can be and how I think guilt-inducing it can be for the ghoster that's there. I think my take. I'm a lot like you, Kim, where I don't ghost, and I will communicate this, and I know it's often can be a fraught thing. I even go as far as to wrap up text threads where I'm being ghosted. Mm-hmm. That's how anti-ghosting I am. Mm-hmm. Where I just say, looks like I've lost your interest. Mm-hmm. Thanks for meeting. I hope you find what you're looking for. Cheers kind of thing. It's like, I know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. We're just going to put a little bow on this.
You class it up.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
I like that.
So I want to give you inspired by this conversation today. So I did something that Esther Perel calls power parting. Esther Perel is a relationship sex guru, and a lot of her focus is on monogamous relationships. Like, Mating in Captivity is her big book. How do you keep a monogamous relationship spicy? So, Kim, make sure you read that.
I'll check it out.
But so she has this, what she calls the relationship accountability spectrum, with ghosting on one end of it, which we all know about, power parting on the other end, and this is what we're talking about doing here and doing it well. And then there's something called icing. Now, you have to remember, a lot of this stuff is via text, right? Text is the dominant form of dating communication. So icing is manufacturing a reason to suspend the relationship, a la, I'm too busy. Mm. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Work's too busy right now. Can we do this another day? The idea of it's on the burner, but it's not full flame. You're keeping it warm. Mm-hmm. The other one is simmering, which is reducing the frequency of dates and communication. Right? So that's sort of like, hey, can we do this next week? Kind of thing. So maybe you were doing something and now you're sort of pulling back.
Or just where someone you've established some kind of a cadence, and then all of a sudden the other person without any communication is just
less available.
Yeah. Or not reaching out or not making plans. It's like we're saying, it's not a great way to behave because it leaves the other person wondering, like, what's going on? Like, could you just tell me?
Yes.
Yeah.
In all three of these, so ghosting, icing, simmering, there's some lack of clarity, right? And there's someone they're not interested or they're less interested. at least behaviorally,
Mhm.
than before. And, there's lots of reasons why you might be less interested. There's someone else in your life. Work really is crazy. You've been sick, whatever it might be, or you're just losing interest, which, can happen naturally. And so we've all been on that side of it. I've certainly have iced and simmered other people. And actually, even just having this language, I think, is really useful
Mhm.
to do. And so, some of it is just being honest with yourself about, I'm just not that interested in this person. Or I'm interested, but I need to communicate the fact that I need to be very clear about what that looks like. So I power parted today.
Okay, I can't wait to hear what power parting is.
Okay. So this was a woman who I met on an app. We met out for a drink and said, hey, let's get dressed up and get a cocktail kind of thing. And she was really quite lovely. She didn't come that dressed up, which was
Colorado's idea of dressed up is.
I was like,
You're just coming back from LA.
It's
Give
true.
us all a little grace.
It wasn't that dressed up. I mean, but in any case, and we had a nice conversation, but it became very clear as we were talking that she's a someday, she's probably a somedayer, I think. Maybe at best a just mayor. That sounds weird to say, but you know what I mean? Kind of a thing. And I know this because I ended up doing a lot of teaching on the date.
Oh, that's funny.
About a new way, and this thing. But, to her credit, she was open-minded, very thoughtful in response. She didn't find the stuff sort of offensive or
Which some people could have.
Which some people certainly could have. And she's doing her own sort of work around dating and so on. So I'm just going to read the thread. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Again, and I was mixed. You know what I mean? I have to say, I was mixed about seeing her again. There was a lot to like, but also I was like, I'm not sure about the match. So I wrote to her, hi, X, enjoying this lovely day. Curious if you want to get together again, or was I not your cup of tea? Because I just hadn't really heard from her, kind of a thing. So I figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
And
communicate.
Yes, that's right. She said, hello, Peter. Nice to hear from you. I'm not sure what you are a cup of yet, which is the beauty of dating. Winky face. Would love to get together again. When are you thinking? Right. So she sort of pushed it back into my court. And I'm always I'm on the lookout for people when it feels very sort of traditionally heteronormative, where the man does the asking, the man does the pursuing, and the woman does the sitting back and sort of choosing kind of thing.
Because she could have said, I'm free Monday night, Wednesday night, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
she could have given you some options.
Yeah, I mean, again, and some of this is when you're interested, you make it easy for someone. I'm not sure that's the case, but that was what I was thinking.
Okay.
Feel free to editorialize as much as you want in this text message. So I said, now that I know you would be interested, I'll start thinking. She wrote, ha, 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 I like the way you sequence things. And I did some thinking about it, and some time went by, and my heart just wasn't in it. I just wasn't, what would I want to do? How would I want to do it? I didn't find myself in that way. And so a short period of time later, this morning, I wrote, good morning, X. I hope the project is going well. She's working on a book related project. Excited for you. Gave this some more thought. And while I think you are lovely, I don't think we are a good match. Wishing you the best in your search. Cheers. So that's I think that's
that's very clear.
That's a power part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I'm concerned about doing this because I don't want to be presumptuous. I don't want to be mean and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So she writes back immediately and says, hi, Peter. Thank you for reaching out and letting me know. I agree with you, but I'm still so glad I met you and had a great conversation with you. Good luck to you as well.
Perfect.
Right? It's a win. Now there's no wondering kind of thing. And I invited her to the Solo Salon that's upcoming.
Nice.
Gave her the discount code. So you might meet her at some point.
Well, when we were talking about this earlier and Kim was saying, she does the power parting after someone asks, and we were talking about behaving well in the dating community. The next step of that is, how does the person respond to your kind, upfront, forward communication?
Yes.
And I've had people say, it was great to meet you, best of luck to you. And I've had people get mad and be mean, bad. I mean, it's part of the behaving is, we are a community of people who are trying to figure this out, and let's support each other. And, there's no place for just being rude or mean to other people, including ghosting and those types of things.
And what was interesting was this came up in the Slack channel. So I have this private community, which you can apply to be part of at petermcgraw.org/solo, about some of the other reasons why people ghost that wasn't covered in the previous episode. And one of them is fear, right? So why do women ghost men in particular is because sometimes you gently power part and the person explodes and is mean, says awful things, and so on, which of course you're like, thank God I stayed away from that person. But it just makes the whole experience fraught.
And if you're doing something like that, something that's really hard, and, telling someone you don't want to see them again, and you're getting negative reinforcement back after you do it, it's, makes you not want to do it again.
That's right. Yeah. So
I did
poisoning the waters.
I did a power parting with a guy I'd been on 3 dates with, and I was really trying to be more open-minded and shift my type of guy. But I was just really forcing it. But we had a great time. So I did a power part, and I was actually thinking he would be a good match for Leslie, our friend Leslie.
Oh, yes.
She's super into wine. He was. And his reaction to the power part was so bad. And I was like, oh, no Leslie for you. Like,
That's
you
right.
just, you never know what could have happened.
That's right.
So,
and that's one of the things that came up in that episode that Dahlia always talks about. This person might become a partner for a friend, might become a business associate, might become a friend. Why is it sort of like, well, just because it's not working in this way, it can't work at all.
Right.
In that sense. All right. Well, we've talked a lot about relationships, and forgive us for those of you who don't care about these kinds of things. But maybe this one, certainly this one applies to everyone. And that is this notion of living unapologetically, whether you're unattached or not, whether you want to be attached or not. That's there. And I see both of you living your lives much more this way. And each of you wrote about this as you completed your homework.
So living unapologetically.
Kim, your life is completely different
than
when we met 2 years ago.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
How so?
So when we met, I was, working in a restaurant. I'm not doing that anymore. I started a business and I quit my full-time job in July.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So this is, what my focus is on my life right now is growing my business and building
Wax Crescent, one of the sponsors of the podcast.
Use code SOLO for 20% off.
That's right.
They're amazing. And the other day I was like, oh no, my last candle is almost gone. I need to order again.
Yeah. So that is, the number one focus of my life is that I have recently discovered in the last couple of weeks that being in the relationship I am, I haven't been taking care of myself. So that's now my priority. Every day I've gotten, back into practicing yoga and making sure I'm essentially taking all the best parts of solo and bringing it into my life again.
So you started to lose, when you moved in with this person, you started to lose a little bit of your...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because we, it was like this honeymoon period for the first couple of months where we were doing this very sit down to dinner every night, domesticated kind of thing. And I think that wasn't working for either of us. So now I feel like we're taking some intentional space for ourselves and kind of put our relationship on pause and are just, resetting. There's still the monogamy. There's still, the foundation. We're still great friends, but I really need to get back to what's important for me. Did I write anything else that's important? I should look at my clipboard.
No, I think that's great. And a lot of that sort of has come from you sort of asserting your independence in terms of creative pursuits. You know, you're writing, obviously the candle company, but then even how you're approaching this relationship and how you're doing it differently than previous relationships.
And I think I'm very unattached to the outcome of it. You know, like I do want a partner for life, I think. But I'm not sure if this is the right partner for that life. And I think being in this situation, I'm going to discover that. And as much as I love this person, I'm not going to sacrifice what I want and my needs for, you know,
you've tried
a
that
relationship.
And see how that works.
I've done that and it doesn't work. And I caught myself every once in a while, I'll catch myself doing it again. And I need to reset and kind of come back to me.
Yeah.
So
I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do too. And that no matter what, you'll learn more about yourself and what works for you and what doesn't. So it's a great step for you in your life. So for me, again, being the people pleaser, I think a repetitive theme in this is do what makes you happy. You know, we've talked about that, and not in terms of hurting someone, like not being so selfish that you're hurting someone else, but
yeah, I think the idea of this is do no harm.
Right.
I always talk about to be unapologetic, but do no harm.
Right. And I would even extend the do what makes you happy to encourage others to do what makes them happy. And I think, Pete, you're good at this. We were talking about trip for Thanksgiving, and then there was a little bit of a snafu, and you were like, you know, you won't offend me. Do what makes you happy. You do what works for you for that trip. And that's so freeing. And it's so nice to know that I don't have to worry about upsetting you or anything like that. And so my takeaway from that is also to give that freedom to other people. And, you know, I'm not going to be offended if you want to stay in tonight and I want to go out. You stay in and I'll go out and we'll both be happy, and then it's fine.
And we'll rendezvous at some other point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear my mountain biking story?
I know this story and I want to hear it every day.
So I'd been dating this guy, not for very long, maybe 2 months. And it was a 3-day weekend. And we had made plans kind of for a lot of the weekend, seeing live music, going dancing, etc. And I'd been really busy and I hadn't mountain biked much. So the one thing I said, I need to take, you know, half a day to go do a great mountain bike ride. Well, he wanted to learn how to mountain bike. And he said, well, maybe can't we learn, you know, can't you take me out and it could be the day I learn? And I said, I really do want to do that with you. And at the same time, I haven't been able to do a hard ride in over a week. So I really want to do this. And he gave me grief. And I said, I've been working on not being a people pleaser, and I need someone to support me in, you know, do what makes you happy. And it's okay. And he literally, it went from grief to raising his voice and being angry. And I just said, we're done. I mean, I'm in 2 months' time for that kind of behavior. It was like, okay, we're done.
I was so proud of Julie for doing this, because old Julie would have said, okay, yeah, well, I can move my schedule around, and found a way to make this thing happen.
Or apologized for just bared the brunt of him being mad, go for the mountain bike ride, and then try to patch things up. And it's like, that is not a good pattern. It's
not a great start.
Right.
in any kind of way. It's a good thing is like, this is a boundary. This is something that is, it is a solo activity or it's a friend activity. It doesn't have to be the case. Again, you know, one of the things I appeared on an episode of Why You Mad with a friend, Louisa, and Louisa and I got to know each other through the world of comedy, but we're both solos. And so we've actually bonded more over soloness rather than comedy. And so she refers to these folks as trads.
Okay, what is that?
As traditionals.
Oh, okay.
Right? So for him, if I may project, you know, for him, he wants to ride the escalator with you. And one of those things is to merge your life, your finances, your identities, and your lifestyle. And so then you're supposed to start to vacation together, something that Kim doesn't do. You're supposed to live together. Kim semi does, right? You know, this kind of thing. And so you're supposed to just start to do the same things, you know? And for a lot of people, you know, a lot of this is sort of revealed in their dating profiles. Like they're looking for someone who does X because now we're going to have our relationship and then we get to do X together. And the fact that you didn't do X together, he was like, well, we got to do X together. So I should learn how to mountain bike, you know, but we know that guy's trash and is going to slow you down for the day.
Right.
Actually, he's going to slow you down for the next year, may slow you down forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. On these rides. And so you're supposed to compromise this thing that brings you joy in that sense. So I thought you did a nice job setting that up. And it wasn't like, it doesn't mean I don't like you. It doesn't mean I want to see you again. It just means I need Saturday afternoon for myself. I'll see you later in the day. We can go two-stepping, you know, and it'll be fine. And he wasn't able to hold that space.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, something I've realized is you can't expect whoever your partner is or multiple partners to be everything for you.
It's a big,
you know,
tall task.
It's a lot of pressure and it puts a lot of stress on any relationship. I think expecting someone to be, you know, your best friend, your companion, your tennis partner, your mountain biking partner, your lover, your accountant, you know, it's so, you know.
Yeah. So I'm very happy about that. I like this term unapologetic. I think it's a powerful term. And I do believe that you should only apologize for things that you regret. Apologize for things that you wish you had done differently. A lot of what we've been taught is that you should apologize to smooth emotions, to smooth relationships. And I think that's a problem, a problematic pattern to have, to apologize for things that you're not truly apologetic about. And so I've stopped doing it. Now, when you get an I'm sorry from me, it's big, right? Because it's like, I am sorry. I wish I could have done that differently. I feel terrible. How can I make it right? I will acknowledge that what I've done may be disappointing. I'll recognize the fact that my desires or what I've done may rub you the wrong way, might not be what you want. And I'm happy to try to smooth that situation. I'm just not going to say I was wrong in order to do it. This podcast, first of all, launching the podcast alone was an act of being unapologetic, right? About being single, that I'm living a non-traditional life, that I was at that time a 49-year-old bachelor and didn't foresee that changing, you know, in some measurable kind of way. And I remember I launched it with trepidation. I'm not sure how much of that came out in episode 1, but it was a little you know, sort of nerve-wracking for me to do it. And then even just like what I did today, I couldn't have done at episode 1, which was to talk about how solo poly, wow, that sounds kind of interesting, enticing. Oh, monogamish, that sounds sort of interesting, enticing. Oh, relationship anarchy, wow, that's really cool. In part because I didn't even know about those ideas when I watched the podcast. And then the other one is like, I didn't understand how they might fit into my life and how I might communicate them with a partner or partners and so on. And so I'm just done apologizing. You know, I'm done feeling bad for the fact that I'm a little unconventional. And I had done that in so many other ways in my life, but it took a while to get it. And in many ways, I needed this podcast to do it in the same way that some people needed to find this podcast to be able to do it. It's amazing the number of people I get reaching out to me. And one of the most common thank yous I get is, I feel more comfortable being myself. And I think that's a powerful idea. You know, like, you really owe it to yourself to live the life that brings you joy, that makes you happy. You really owe it to yourself to ask for what you want. Because if you don't ask for what you want, how are you going to get it?
Yeah.
And so, so for me, this notion of being unapologetic is just really powerful. I've been now playing with it a little bit. a little impishly at times. So like I kind of, if you're at like a dinner party or at a party and there's like a bunch of couples and so on, sometimes I'm just like, oh, so when are you guys going to start swinging? You know, just like, you know, just like pushing a little bit of unconventional kind of thinking on them and to see, you know, see what happens with that.
Anything good happen with that?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Keep at it. Eventually something good will happen. Maybe you'll get invited.
But the issue is that that's not an unreasonable question relative to all the unreasonable questions that single people get asked all the time.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? And so I'm not sure I'll keep doing that, but I'm certainly enjoying it. So for the last few minutes, let's transition into looking forward.
Okay.
If I may. Well, I guess I'll start by asking you two, looking forward, is there something that you are thinking about, want to experiment with, reinforce in your solo lives forward?
I can't say specific things that I would want to experiment with, but I feel like my learnings and my shifting through the podcast will help me if I end up partnering in some way in the future. I feel like I'll approach that in a much healthier, more communicative fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to have those types of conversations, and definitely that developing a relationship that works for both people if I get to that point.
Nice. Kim?
I think for me, it's just really...
She's like...
I know. Well, you know, being in a relationship is forcing me to do a lot of work that I wasn't aware of around being in a relationship and also being authentic and true to myself. So I think moving forward, I just really need to just stay true to myself, take care of myself, make myself a priority. You know, I wake up every day. This morning as I was making my breakfast, I was like, okay, how is being in this relationship serving me? Do I want to continue to be in this relationship? And I think it's approaching it every day and reconsidering, is this working? Is it not working? And how can I better take care of myself and do what I want in my life, regardless of whether or not this person wants to come on the journey with me?
Yeah. To use Julie's favorite term, to be intentional.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way, on a regular basis. Yeah, I think that's great. I would say for me, for all the relationship talk we've had, we haven't spoken that much about friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that has happened with this is I feel that my relationships have deepened. I've always appreciated friendships, but I'm starting to, because they stand sometimes in contrast or in conflict with more traditional romantic sexual ones, and yet they're more consistent, they're often more supportive, they're more stable. And so I've been working very hard at expressing my affection for the people in my life who are my friends. And so that I look forward to doing no matter what. Like, even if I turn into a no way person, which I do on occasion. So here's a few other things to look forward to. The solo project is now a project. It's not just a podcast. So there's a very good chance that this time next year, there'll be a book out. I'd be frankly surprised if there's not a book out. I am now in process, and again, this will have already happened by the time this episode. I'm in full pivot from humor research to solo. So I'm redoing my website, redoing all my socials, everything, so that it is impossible to ignore the fact that I'm working on solo. And if you want stuff about humor, you can find it, but you got to look harder. So that's a complete flip.
It's very cool.
That's very cool. And again, I'm just putting myself out there in a way that it's still not fully comfortable, but it's happening.
You're owning it.
You
gotta own it.
I am going to own this big time. I'm starting to do events. I did a beta test with friends and family of a concept called the Solo Salon, which is basically an hour of social time, an hour of programming, entertainment, like music, comedy, cultural stuff like poetry, talks, and so on. And then another hour of social time, bringing together solos to celebrate our lives in this way, in a non-dating fashion. So this is not a dating event. So by the time this launches, we'll have had our first event, and the next one will be forthcoming.
It's so cool. I was at the friends and family one, obviously, and it was such an amazing night. Just something completely different. I've never experienced anything like that before. It was, the socializing was great. The programming was great, thought provoking. And it was so nice to just be in a different space. And so I'm looking forward to the public one too.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity doing events, bringing together like-minded people and proud singles.
Yeah. And I unfortunately didn't make it to that, but you are a fabulous host.
Oh, that's very nice. I do relish this term host. I'm actually leaning into it. I host this podcast. I host these events. There's a skill to hosting that I'm still developing, but I do enjoy it. I am back to being a professor. My mini retirement is over, and I'm back in Colorado happily. But I am starting to turn my scholarly attention to the issue of single living. I've put together a team, a lab of sorts. I've started running some surveys, looking at interesting questions. So I'm running a survey right now on pets. So there's some forthcoming episodes about singles and their pets.
My dogs are my children.
Yeah, I know. This is one of those things. And how might singles relate to their pets differently than non-singles, for example. And I've also will have launched a new project that's more business focused for organizations called A Single Insight, the Science of Solos, that highlights the opportunities and needs of single people as customers and as employees. And that relates to my life as a business school professor. So I'm bringing my personal and professional lives together. We are also going to be doing many, many more in-person podcasts because we are sitting in my brand new podcast studio.
Yes.
It's very cozy.
It is a cozy little space. I have a new apartment that I spent a lot of time making feel like a good home base. And I have this small room. And I was like, this is going to be the perfect podcast studio. So I'm hoping to do many more in-person podcasts where sound quality is better. And then I think the energy is a lot better.
Yeah, definitely.
So look forward to that. Last thing, I am working on an idea, speaking of sex, maybe I'll make it part of a series, is we talk a lot about the relationship escalator. We talk a lot about unconventional relationships. We haven't even discussed the really unconventional relationships that are becoming more and more popular. And that is the sort of seeking arrangements kind of things, which is it's not prostitution. It's not the kind of typical guy pays for everything. It's sort of this in-between world of like sugar daddies, sugar mamas, and sugar babies. And so on. And this was prompted by me matching with a woman who is a aspiring sugar baby and got talking to her about this world, the world she's living in. And I think that'll make a provocative topic there. So I may bring a sugar baby into the studio with a chaperone, probably Joy, to ask some, answer some questions or find someone who knows that world to talk about these sort of in-between kind of relationships that really break some norms that I think are interesting. So I think there'll be a lot of myth busting that happens.
Yeah. Good
So
stuff.
that's looking forward. Julie, Kim, you're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and show notes, go to petermcgraw.org. Please subscribe and share with your single friends.